Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from J. Dodify. Steve, what do you think of the sport of boxing? Not the pantomime bollocks that surrounds it with people like Floyd Mayweather, but for its sporting challenge excitement. Personally, I love it. It requires dedication, concentration, and determination while providing an outlet and focus for people who otherwise wouldn't have any. I understand that it needs to be better regulated, particularly with regard to monitoring the health of fighters as they age, but I genuinely think that the benefits of the sport can outweigh its drawbacks. It certainly benefited me, although I retired with a decidedly average 1-1 record. I confess to not knowing a whole lot about it beyond just sort of being a casual spectator. It doesn't really draw my attention, except unless there's like a big circus fight, you know, where everybody's looking over. And I think, well, I don't really like boxing, but what's going on over there? You know? But yeah, I do know, I have heard enough from people who have stories like yours where they say, you know, before I got into boxing, I didn't know what my life was going to be. Even if they didn't become like professional boxers, just having boxing as an activity, just like I guess how some people might study martial arts or might take up another sport. It gives them an outlet. It gives them something to focus on. It gives them a reason to exercise and to train up their body and their mind and to learn a skill or learn a set of skills. And it just really helps people make themselves better. You know, it helps them. It's a sort of an act of self-improvement. So I can't speak to that personally because I've never done it, but I know enough people who have that I take that seriously. I take that to be something that actually happens. But as for being a boxing fan, I mean, I don't particularly have anything against it. Like, there's nothing about the sort of platonic ideal of boxing that makes me think, oh, they shouldn't do it. Because as long as it's regulated and as long as it's kept a sport and not a blood sport, you know, and as long as there are protections in place so that people aren't severely injured just as a matter of course, just for doing it, you know, I don't think there's any real objection to it. I could object to just, you know, the very idea of there being like combat sport, because I could say, oh, it's violence and it's glorifying violence and, you know, and that's always a bad thing. But I live in a glass house where that comes because, I mean, I'm a huge fan of professional wrestling, which is not a sport, is completely different from boxing. And I don't mean to insult legitimate boxing by comparing it to pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is very much a form of theater, but, you know, talk about glorifying violence. If there's anything in our culture that glorifies violence as much as pro wrestling, I don't know what that might be, aside perhaps from a Zack Snyder movie. So I don't really have any room to criticize boxing for that. And actually, I think the injury rates for boxers are probably a lot better than for wrestlers at this point. So yeah. Ahoy or no? It seems to me that societal attitudes toward male sexuality are improving. Do you think this is because I personally grew more mature and have more mature friends, or is it really society? And do you have any anecdotes of your own where male sexuality was treated positively rather than violently? I can't think of any specific anecdotes. I do know, again, just in the vein of having matured and having seen people I spend time with mature and seeing attitudes change. Now there's a lot more ease with it. You know, a man who is affectionate toward another man will probably at worst it'll be viewed kind of humorously. You know, like they'll sort of. I have guy friends who will sort of playfully, you know, exaggeratedly kind of flirt with each other, you know, and so it's not seen as a threatening thing. It's not seen as something that should be, you know, tamped down or viewed as unacceptable or something to be upset about or to be worried about. You know, there's a lot less gay panic in my circle of friends and in my own life than there was when I was younger. So I mean, I don't know whether that's down to my selection of friends or if societal attitudes in general are getting better about that. But I think it's definitely a good thing, and I hope that it does denote a wider societal change, because that would be a good thing. You know, there's nothing wrong with men being affectionate toward each other, and there's nothing wrong with men being sexual with each other. It's a normal part of life. You know, if a man does a strip tease at a party where it's mostly other men there. Like, there's no reason to freak out about it, and there's no reason to not be able to appreciate it if that's your thing, if you think that's attractive. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It should be a completely healthy thing. And if we're getting to that point, I think that's wonderful. Some random geek, hey Steve, the one janitor asked his followers on Twitter for a list of leftists, socially progressive YouTubers. You were mentioned as well. I'm sure you would have a list too of leftists, social progressive, feminist YouTubers, many of which are your friends. My question is, what are some really good atheist channels that you would still recommend, past or present? They don't have to focus solely on just atheist subjects, just like yours and Christy Winter's channel. Love the channel. I saw that tweet by the one janitor, and I think it was nice that somebody mentioned me. I thought that was very gratifying. He would be on my list. I think he's terrific. Obviously, Christy. Kevin Logan, I think, is someone who does a good job. Dick Coughlin. I've enjoyed Dick Coughlin for years, and I like his videos too. I'm sorry. Foxy Jezebel, I love her. Peter Coffin, you know. There are quite a few actually that I can think of. ContraPoints, you know, H Bomber guy. These are people who they don't really talk about atheism particularly in their videos. They don't make atheist branded content very often, if at all. But I do think, you know, they are seen very widely and known very widely in atheist circles, and I think that they all do spectacular work. So they would certainly be on my list, and if anybody ever included me on a list with those folks, I would be incredibly flattered indeed, as I always am when somebody mentions my name alongside the likes of them. So yeah, there are good people. There are really good people, and there are people outside of YouTube who do great things too. You know, like Dan Errol and Martin Hughes. And Stephanie Zvan and Greta Christina, and people who are bloggers primarily, or who speak at conventions and conferences, who again just do fantastic work in the atheist community, who are voices for being very progressive and inclusive, that I just adore and would not want to do without. But I mean, I think the grand poobah of YouTube atheists still has to be Aaron, and I think Aaron has to be. Because he's great on social justice issues. He doesn't talk about it specifically very much, but whenever he sort of takes a side, he's usually on the right side. And in terms of his atheist content and his science content, he's just without peer. So Aaron has to be right up at the top of the list too. Kaboom Splat Yuck 2. Hi Steve, 2 questions. 1, could it be argued that the Union smashed the Confederacy because it was an economic threat to the North, and not because the Confederates were really, really racist? Did the North do the right thing for the wrong reason? 2, could a similar argument be made about World War II, that the Allies didn't give a shit about fascism and only started to worry about it when Hitler threatened the financial well-being of the largely anti-Semitic ruling classes of Europe and America? Could it be argued that Churchill and FDR didn't care about the Jews, Roma, Slavs, communists, homosexuals, and disabled people who were suffering in Nazi Germany and other Nazi-occupied lands? I think you could make a very good case for both of those. And I don't know if it's so much, and this is where these sorts of arguments get kind of dicey, because I don't know if it would be fair to say that the likes of Roosevelt and Churchill, for instance, didn't care about the people suffering under the Nazi regime before they felt threatened by Hitler's encroachment. But I think it's fair to say they didn't care enough. I think that's a better way to put it. I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't assume that Churchill was completely cold to the suffering that he perceived happening in Europe under the Third Reich before the start of the war. But clearly it wasn't enough to spur the other major powers in the world to action to stop Hitler and to liberate those people, until they basically had no other choice, until they were facing, okay, it's either going to be war or he's just going to march over all of us. And I think that it's worth having that argument of, are there times when maybe intervention like that should be done earlier, when you see that something like a fascist dictatorship that is engaging in genocide. So you have 2 serious crimes against humanity there. You have a fascist government, a totalitarian government that has been imposed on people, that is building up its military presence, and it is taking a very, very strong, harsh, sort of putting a boot on the necks of its people and quashing their liberties. And also it's carrying out a genocide campaign within its borders. It's targeting and eliminating people in certain groups. Even if that regime is not posing a direct, imminent threat to you, is there ever a time when it is morally, it's a moral obligation to step in and do something if you know that these things are happening, even if they're happening within a sovereign border of a country that doesn't appear to be imminently threatening you? That's an argument that people have had for decades. You know, that's an argument that people had before World War II, and that's an argument that people still have today. And it's a very difficult subject, because you have a balance to strike between not wanting to start a war, not wanting to put even more lives in danger, not wanting to create an even worse situation than you currently have, and wanting to stop the suffering and the oppression of people right now. You know, it's a very difficult situation, and it's not clear to me what I don't know if there is a blanket right answer. I think it's something you have to look at on a case-by-case basis, and you have to also look at the track record of when, for instance, the United States takes it upon itself to intervene in situations like that. Is there a track record of that turning out very well? And you could argue that there's not. Bruce Bardup, Steve, appreciate your stance on feminism and why it's a bad idea to talk about feminism with prominent YouTube anti-feminists. On what conditions would you be willing to deal with anti-feminist commentary in the comment sections of your videos? Not how not to get blocked, but how to be a strong, positive asset to the channel and a critic of feminism. I can think of only one. Delight me with truth. Do you have any better rule? No. I mean, I draw a distinction between anti-feminists and people who are critical of aspects of feminism. If you are coming at it from an informed point of view, and you have a disagreement about a particular, like a school of feminism or something a particular feminist has said, or certain, you know, maybe strategic disagreements, saying that feminists aren't going about pursuing their goals in the most productive way, or feminists are being too exclusionary of certain groups, or maybe too inclusionary of certain groups. If that's where you're coming at it from, and you're asking a question in good faith, or you're posing an argument in good faith, that's usually fine with me. But if you say I'm an anti-feminist, I oppose feminism, period, or, you know, I think that women do not experience oppression, or that there is no gender inequality, or that gender inequality is tilted against men rather against women, or basically if you lie or you say things that just aren't true and you refuse to be corrected, and you deny the legitimacy of feminism as a whole, then I really am not interested in anything you have to say. Joe McClory, do you take pride in the fact that you are one of the targets of assholes? If you had the power to change their narratives about you without changing your actions or stances, or do you kind of like being their example for someone who refuses to engage with them? It's tough, because in a way, if we assume that they're going to be attacking someone anyway, like if we assume there's nothing we can do about that, and there is, actually, there's a lot we can do about it that we're just not doing, but I would rather them attack me than attack someone else. So I guess in a sense, in that way, I guess it's a good thing, but I don't care what their narrative is about me. I don't care what their argument is. I don't care whether what I do feeds their narrative or not, because they're dishonest, self-serving people. No matter what I do, or no matter what any target of theirs does, they will paint it to serve their narrative. So it doesn't matter if I ignore them. It doesn't matter if I engage with them. If I don't play with them, then they make a thing out of that. They say, Steve doesn't want to talk to anybody, you know? If I did play with them, they would turn that, and they would twist that into something. So it doesn't really matter, and I don't really care whether I serve their narratives or not. If you're going to be hated by somebody, it's good to be hated by awful people. I mean, I do take a certain tiny amount of pride in the fact that I am so hated by scumbags, but you know, that doesn't really do anything except give me a reason to go, oh, at least I know I'm doing something right. You know, if that guy thinks I'm an asshole, then I must be doing something right. But other than that, I don't really care. I would just prefer if they all just were made to go away, you know. because I think that's ultimately the only effective way to deal with them. You know, if they want to be abusive people, then force them to go be abusive somewhere else. Don't let them be abusive here. And for my own part, that's what I do on this channel. If people post abusive comments, I don't allow them to. Period. Like, I don't fight with them. I just ban them. I tell you, hey, well, if that's what you want to do, get the fuck out. Bye. Have fun being an abusive prick somewhere else. There's plenty of other places. YouTube. Anyway, that's it for the main section. It's time for phase 2 of the You Had to Ask video, which is a little something I like to call
the lightning round.
Natalie Kirk, dearest Stephen. No, dearest Natalie. How many white supremacists does it take to screw in a light bulb? Yours sincerely, Natalie. Trick question. White supremacists do not change broken light bulbs because they don't like being enlightened. See, I got it. You thought I wouldn't get it, but I got it. Kaylee Borkwin, in an old video of yours, 5 Stupid Things About New Year's Eve, you had a mini breakdown about wanting to move to Australia. As an Australian, I'm curious, did you ever get a chance to visit? No, I have never gotten a chance to visit Australia, sadly. Actually, I'm glad you reminded me. I remember that bit. That's one of my favorite bits from one of those videos. It was one of those things that I just sort of added in as I was writing it, to sort of add a little extra layer to what I thought was kind of a boring video, and it turned out really well. I always love when those little random things happen and it grows into like a running joke that really kind of elevates the video and makes it a lot better than it would have otherwise. So I'm glad you like that. And unfortunately, no, I have not gone to Australia yet. I would like to. Or Canada. Or Britain. Or, you know, New Zealand. There's lots of very nice places that I would love to go and just stay forever. Never come back. Anyway, Sabrina Lozides Meredith, what are some of your favorite animated films? I personally love The Last Unicorn from 1982, Secret of Nim, and An American Tail. Yeah, I loved American Tail. I saw An American Tail in the theater when I was a kid, and I just adored it. And The Land Before Time, too. I was very much in a Don Bluth phase when I was a kid. And now, as a grown-up, I got to throw in The Iron Giant. The Iron Giant, to me, is maybe the best American animated film I've ever seen. I love The Iron Giant. And I'll co-sign An American Tail and throw in The Land Before Time, because they were definitely childhood favorites. Brownstein, do you have an evacuation plan for Stuffy and the gang if you have a fire or other emergency? Cat too, of course. What would you do if the worst happened? Thanks. Well, the stuffed animals go into the sheet on the bed and they get taken out like toys in Santa's sack. Just carry them out. And the kitty cat would get grabbed by the scruff of the neck and carried out as well. And if I have time, I'll dig out her pet carrier over here that has a little bit of junk on it and throw her in that. But yeah, there's definitely a pets and stuffed animals first policy if there's ever a need for an urgent evacuation. Christy Winters, hey Steve, a question for you. How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by Providence, impoverished and squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar? He wrote his way out. That's the answer. He wrote his way out. Not clever enough for this shit. I just finished up your latest addition to the An Atheist Reads, and it got me wondering if any of the authors that you cover in the series have ever reached out to you in response. If so, how did it go down? Frank Turek followed me on Twitter briefly a few years ago and then unfollowed me, I noticed at some point. I sent him a private message saying, "Hi Frank, it's me. I did a series on your book if you wanted to, talk privately about whatever." And I never ever heard from him. Ray Comfort shared the first video of my series about him to his Facebook page twice. I commented on both posts, never got a single personal response from Ray, so I don't think they're interested in talking to me, which is fine with me. Matt Machado, hey Steve, did you watch The Orville? If so, what did you think? Do you think it's the true heir to Star Trek that some people are saying it is? No, I don't think that. I didn't think it was terrible. A lot of the advanced reviews were really, really savage and thought that it was really bad. I thought it was fine. I mean, I've seen the first 2 episodes now, and I think, oh, this is okay. I guess I could watch this. It doesn't make me excited. It's not like the greatest thing I've ever seen. I don't think it's like great, but it's okay. You know, I can. It's like, okay, I can watch this. You know, so no, I wouldn't say it's the true heir to Star Trek, but I wouldn't say it's the huge disaster that some of its more vicious detractors have said. It's just sort of, okay, I'll watch it, I guess. Specific hieroglyphics. Hey, Steve, when will Matt Groening take The Simpsons out old Yeller style? The last time it was any good, I was a toddler. Oh, so I'm so much older than you. Thank you. The Simpsons is the sort of a show that I mean, it's kind of like what I just said about the Orville at this point. Except that at one time it was a brilliant show. And now it's just sort of, you know, like, I don't think The Simpsons is terrible now. I don't think that it's awful. I still watch the new episodes, and I'm usually diverted. You know, I'm usually like, oh, that was nice. But there's really no reason for it to exist anymore, other than it just is still there. You know, and now a part of its thing is how long running it is. And so it's sort of like this, you know, it just perpetuates itself. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice if there's even a possibility of having some sort of satisfying finale at this point after it's been on for so long. It would be nice if they just said, you know what, after this current contract, we're just going to wrap it up. I know it could get maybe renewed for a few more years, but we're just going to stop. We probably should have stopped 20 years ago. You know, I would like to see it come to some sort of dignified end at some point. Radical Bacon, how do you feel about the gray in your beard? Does it feel like someone else is looking at you when you look in a mirror, or do you think it makes you look distinguished or something else? I don't know. I don't think it makes me look too distinguished, but I think it's all right. I don't know. I feel a touch of gray adds an air of distinction. That's what Data said, but I don't really pay much attention to it. I just think, oh, gray hairs. Okay, I'll be dead soon. Speed O Spank. Hey Steve, I recently watched your old mail call videos and you really hated motorcycles. A few times in your recent Ask videos, I hear what sounds like a motorcycle drive by outside, and I always expect you to comment on it. Have you changed your views on them, or have you just given up complaining about them? Oh, neither. I still hate them, but if I'm in the middle of something while shooting a video and a motorcycle goes by, and it's one of these videos where I'm not, you know, I'm just sort of talking to the camera, it's not a scripted video where I'm trying to get it just so, I usually just keep going, I ignore it. Why should I let that guy on the motorcycle affect how I shoot my videos? You go ahead and run your motorcycle, bud, and I'm just going to keep talking. That's, you know, but I still find them incredibly annoying. Jordan Joan P. Hey Steve, which one is more pointless? Taking a common non-kryptonite bullet for Superman, or running a bunch of errands for the Flash? Also, what pointless thing can you come up with to do for a superhero? Yeah, I think taking the bullet for Superman has got to be the ultimate, because I mean that's kind of what Superman is known for, is having bullets bounce off of his chest. So you're really way off if you're taking a bullet for Superman. I don't know, maybe giving Wonder Woman a polygraph for a Christmas gift. You know, I mean, she's got the lasso. What does she need with that? I don't know. Harry Ray, you could tell that I was trying to think of another thing for that, and I just had nothing. So there was that uncomfortable pause, and then I said, I'm just going to move on to the next one. Harry Ray, where would Megatron sit on your scale of bad guy leadership? He managed to see off regular challenges from Starscream to maintain control of the Decepticons. Do you appreciate the strong, stable leadership that Megatron has given us in these difficult times? Yeah, I would have to, if we add Megatron to the list from last week, I have to put him at the top. I think he's actually better than Cobra Commander, because Starscream was after his job like regularly, and Megatron still maintained control. So good for you, Megatron. Knight6831, hi Steve, I like the new channel logo. Now my question is, why did you change the channel logo? I changed my user pic, my avatar. The old one that I'd had for a few years was a photograph that a friend of mine had taken of me that I think is a really cool looking picture of me. And the new one is a portrait that was drawn by someone on Twitter named Scutch, who does all kinds of, does portraits of all kinds of really cool social justice, progressive oriented YouTubers. Scutch has done a couple portraits of H. Bomber Guy, did one of ContraPoints, did a really awesome one of Christy Winters recently. So it's really cool to sort of be included in that little club of people who have had Scutch portraits done. And I just think it's a really cool portrait, so I wanted to share it with everybody and to promote Scutch, who does really awesome work. So there you go. Samuel Sturgill, Steve, this is my first silly question. Would Wonder Woman's vagina be too much for Batman to handle? You know, if Superman can have sex with Lois Lane without killing her, which, despite Larry Niven's very reasonable concerns, it seems that he's able to do, because Superman and Lois have been an item in the comics and been married and presumably have a relatively normal sex life. So if Superman can maintain control and not inadvertently murder Lois Lane in the act of love, I think we have to give the same benefit of the doubt to Wonder Woman. If Superman can avoid killing Lois, I think Wonder Woman could avoid whatever might have, you know, ripping off Batman's dick. I think she has the self-control and the restraint to be able to handle that. So I think Batman would not have that to worry about, personally. That's just me. You know, I mean, right? I don't know. Anyway, that's it for the questions. That's it for the lightning round. It's time now for the shout out. And the shout out this week, a little change of pace. I've been lately giving shout outs to organizations and charities that they're sort of helping people that are feeling threatened by the Trump administration and other sort of right-wing political movements here in the U.S. And this week I want to give a shout out to a really awesome event that is happening in the near future. It is a secular, skeptical, atheist event. And it is the one and only Skepticon. Skepticon, actually the 10th annual Skepticon, is happening on November 10th, 11, and 12th in Springfield, Missouri. You can learn more at Skepticon.org. They are releasing their list of speakers right now. The list looks awesome. It is a great, if you want to support a positive, progressive, inclusive atheist movement and atheist conference, you can start with Skepticon. It's Skepticon, and it's very well known for the fact that it's free to attend. So it operates on donations. So if you can possibly afford to spare a few bucks to support Skepticon and to help them continue to put on these awesome events, I would encourage you to go to Skepticon.org and do that as well, and check out the speakers list. And if you're in the Springfield, Missouri area, or you can make the drive, unfortunately I'm not going to be there, it's too far for me to go. But if you are able to make the trip and you want to spend a weekend with some awesome people and see some awesome speakers and get a taste of the good side of the atheist skeptical community, Skepticon is definitely one of those places that you should consider going. And if you can't go, spread the word. And again, if you can afford to part with a few bucks to help them out, I would consider doing that as well. So there you go. Skepticon. Check it out. Awesome. I also want to remind you, as always, to check out the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. These are podcasts that are created and, for the most part, co-hosted by my buddy Jason Harding. There's a whole bunch of awesome Let Me Listen podcasts under that umbrella, but I always want to draw your particular attention to the Late Seating podcast, which is a movie review podcast co-hosted by Jason and me, where we take a fresh look at a movie that has a reputation of either being really, really great or really, really bad. And we decide for ourselves whether it deserves whatever reputation it has. And we crack some jokes and make fun of it and hopefully give you some laughs along the way. Our most recent episode is a review of the movie 300, which I think is one of our better episodes. And we have episodes going back years now. We've been doing this for years. We're old hands at this. We've reviewed so many awesome and terrible movies. So you can go back and listen to all of our past episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the awesome Let Me Listen podcasts by going to LetMeListenPodcast.com. That's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here for another week. I want to remind you, as always, to please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly, but in order for me to make these videos, you have to ask. So please do leave a comment on this video asking your question for me to answer in the next You Had to Ask video. That's how it works. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel and help me continue to make these videos, which hopefully, if you're here, you must like something about it, right? Probably shouldn't have asked. Anyway, thanks for watching.